Now let's try another preset that's a little bit more advanced than just a fade and fly in. I'm going to select the basketball that we had bouncing before. And of course, if you add a preset to an existing animation, it'll simply wipe out all the old keyframes and replace them with whatever the new tween is. So we can go over to our motion presets and we can try one that's a little bit more advanced, like the Bounce Out 3D. From the preview, you can see we've got a lot of motion going on. So for starters, what I'm going to do is just click Apply. Now you can see that it asks me if I want to replace the original animation, so I'll say yes, and we'll have all new keyframes representing our new motion for our object. Now it started out at the beginning point, so you can see that most of the animation goes down below here, but we're definitely seeing that bouncing animation drop in. It is in the wrong place though. But remember, we can move the entire animation whenever we want to, simply by clicking the animation path and not the object. Now that's going to be the solid line path here, not the dotted one. When I click it, I've selected the motion tween, and you can see that over in the properties window. And we can grab it and move it straight up on the stage. And you can see that all of my shape and the keyframes come with it. Now I'm just going to keep moving this up here until the basketball is kind of off the top of the stage, and I also want the bounces to look like they're kind of along the floor again. So I'll bring them up just a little bit and we can see those bounces right here. Maybe a little bit more. Now let's take a look at this animation over in our motion editor. I've got it selected, so I'm just going to open up my motion editor panel, and we can see a lot going on. We've got scale X and Y going here. We've got X and Y, and we even have a Z property being animated. And we've got a couple of eases. I can see simple down here, which is our normal one, but I can also see a bounce in, which is just like the one we used before. Now our animation has a lot of frames. Let's see how much. Looks like it goes out here to frame 135, and I'm only seeing 24 in my graphs here, so let's pull on that number. I'm going to click and pull right, and we'll just extend this on out. And now we can actually see what's going on in the scale X and scale Y layers. For starters, this looks pretty much like our animation that we built. We had a Y property going up and down with a bounce in applied to it. It looked just like this one. But ours wasn't moving any in the X direction or the Z direction. So we're getting a little crosswise movement on the stage from the X value, and we're getting a little perspective by changing the Z value. What's also kind of cool is they're doing some custom keyframes down here to actually deform the object in the X and Y directions when it hits the ground. Let's see what that looks like. I'll close my motion editor, and let's just move our playhead along this timeline. Here, I'll pull back over this side, and we can see that the ball kind of comes in, and as it goes and hits the ground, we can see a big bounce there. Now that's actually the ball deforming in the X and Y directions, and we can definitely see the keyframes that are creating that right here. Now this is one preset that's a lot easier to understand in the motion editor than it is just by looking at the timeline. Now while we're on the subject of manipulating a tween by the path, there are actually a couple of other things that we can do with tweens as well. And those might surprise you. Like, for instance, the transform tool over here. I'm going to switch over to the transform tool, and let me click away from everything and make sure that I just have the path selected. Now you can even see that the basketball is not included in the selection. It's just the actual path itself. Now this is interesting because the transform tool is going to do exactly what it always does. It's going to scale, rotate, skew, whatever it is you want, but it's going to do it to the object we have selected. Now in this case, we're taking a very complex animation with lots of keyframes and interrelated items, and all I want to do is simply stretch the path. I'll just grab it over here on the edge, and you see that I can just extend the path, and it recalculates everything, including all the bounces and everything that goes on. Now I'm just going to stretch it out a little bit more this way. And now, even though we started with the preset, we have our ball moving and bouncing in the X direction and traveling a lot further than it did originally. So don't forget that our transform tool is for more than just transforming objects.